Welcome, 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 everybody. This is TransParents. I am one of the co-hosts, Amber. My pronouns are she, her, and you can find me on TikTok at Moonchild77. I'll let my co-host introduce herself.
Hey y'all, I am Jenny. You can find me on TikTok and Blue Sky and Instagram still, but I'm there still at Trans Loving Mama.
And this is our guest, Casey Fox. She's coming to us special tonight. She is a social worker and a trans veteran, and we wanted to talk about some of the executive orders and how they're affecting transgender employees, how they're talking, or actually how they're impacting our veterans, our current and our former veterans, and their services. So we felt like this was Derek is saying hello, an important topic to bring up tonight. And we've been trying to hit different components of the executive order since
Mhm.
January has rolled out. So welcome tonight, Casey. I'll let you introduce yourself.
Thank you for having me. So I enlisted in 2002. I was part of the invasion force of Iraq. And then later that year, I went to Afghanistan, then Iraq, and then Iraq. And then I was done. It was time to get out. My experience in the military, I was a U.S. Navy corpsman. I was Fleet Marine Force warfare device with jump wings as my warfare devices. And I was with the infantry for my entire time, 6 years total. And then my last two was actually, I was not a special operations reconnaissance corpsman, but I worked and operated with reconnaissance battalion. So
Wow.
on my military credentialing, um, during that time, the big thing that in the military is like, did you get your combat action ribbons? And I'm like, yeah, I got one. And then I decided to go get a second one. So,
Right.
um, and then after that, I left the military because I just kind of burnt out. And 6 years, you're doing 4 combat tours plus workups and everything else. I was doing the time. That 6 years, 3 years of it was actually overseas doing operational type stuff. I got out. I actually went to Southwestern Oklahoma State University, where I got an undergrad in park recreation management, park law enforcement with minors in allied health and wildland wildfire. Sorry, getting ahead of myself. And then while I was in SWASU, I actually worked a little bit with the Department of Interior, helping doing wildland firefighting during that big drought that Oklahoma had during that year, or the several years. And then I thought I was going to become an air marshal, then Ted Cruz read Green Eggs and Ham, and that didn't happen because the government shut down. I ended up working for the state of Oklahoma as a park ranger. I did that for almost 5 years, and then got tired of seeing people I deployed with checking out early. And that led me into going to OU. And then I got my master's in social work from OU. And then from there, I worked for the federal government pretty much since then. And doing things for like counseling for PTSD, sexual assault. Actually worked a little bit doing homeless housing for veterans. Also worked with the Homeless Alliance, helping the Homeless Alliance while I was in school with housing using Ryan White funds. And then that led me up to where I'm at now, which is the Pacific Northwest, which is beautiful. I do not miss Oklahoma one bit. So I've kind of been doing that, working to open my own practice due to how political events are happening and uncertainty. So that's the big focus right now. And I make crappy TikTok videos because I just turn on the mic and just record and hit send because, why edit? So, and then, the other caveat is I was on the first board to help with Norman Pride. So, as part of the first board members on that. So, I should have known a lot sooner before my transition, but I'm a slow learner at times, and I have to do it the hard way. So, um, and I've been fortunate in my transition. I've been able to keep my family, our relationships actually, I believe, better than what I ever was, and everything's been pretty great, other than the world burning around us. So,
Yeah.
Right, right. And I would imagine up until the last couple of months, for the most part, it sounds like you didn't really have any hiccups with working as a federal employee, correct?
um, no hiccups. I did make a big move back in June from Oklahoma to the Pacific Northwest. So that was a big kind of like adventure. But I got to do something that's very dear to my heart because of my undergrad and being a state park law enforcement officer. We got to go see 4 national parks on the way up here, so we made a nice vacation out of it. So that was great. But I mean, I wouldn't say it's been without hiccups as far as social life,
Right,
because it's something that, like, I travel, I have to look at the state to see if I can use the bathroom or not.
Yeah.
right.
So it's one of those things, like, only thing I can kind of equate it to is if you're carrying concealed weapon, you have to see which state you can carry it in. I have to see which state I can be trans in.
Yeah.
So.
That is, and I want to say welcome to Derek. Hi. And Jeffrey, we did see your comments.
You
And I
think?
saw the one before that, Where Art Thou? We saw that one. We were running behind, and I think I did throw. I don't see it in the comments here, but I did throw one out there, so we'd be there shortly.
Yeah.
So
You can
everybody had
blame
it.
me for running late. I decided to do something crazy today. I got a new bike and haven't done anything cardio or long distance stuff, and I decided to go ride my bike 26 miles. So so I started to
Self-care.
drop off. I got my coffee with me. So
No, I get it. I get it. Jenny, you look like you have a something away.
No, I just have the dogs, and this is the time
Okay.
I want to be like right in my space, but that's okay.
That kind of happens. So tonight we decided I went ahead and pulled up different executive orders, like some of the ones that are impacting, whether it be veterans, whether it be healthcare, whether it be federal employee, and I don't necessarily have all of them up, but I did pull up. Here is some of them. So let me just try and split my screen here so I can read it off to the side too while we're doing this. Or it'll be 2. Oh, nope, it's going to do that for y'all too. Okay, never mind. We won't do that. Go back to full. Okay, so with this is different executive orders impacting transgender veterans, their families, and federal employees. So the first one is Executive Order 14168, defending women from gender ideology, extremism, and restoring biological truth to the federal government.
the
This
first you
order
got find,
Right,
yeah,
this was the very first one, the very
yeah.
first one. This order directed federal agencies to enforce laws governing sex-based rights, protections, opportunities, and accommodations to protect men and women as biologically distinct sexes. It also
While defining
mandated the
women
removal of,
as everybody.
right, and it also removed all statements, policies, regulations, forms, communications, or other internal and external messages promoting gender ideology. Now, there is already a court challenge, Doe versus McHenry. This case challenged the transfer of transgender women incarcerated in federal prisons to men's facilities and the denial of access to gender affirming care. The court granted a temporary restraining order and preliminary injunction preventing the implication of certain sections of the executive order. And part of that is because it conflicts with Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. It prohibits employment discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, and national origin. The Supreme Court ruled in Bostock versus Clayton County in 2020 that discrimination based on gender identity or sexual orientation is a form of sex discrimination under Title VII.
And Gorsuch
So,
was the swing vote on that too, by the way.
right, he's always a swing vote. And I
Uh,
want I will get y'all to notice that. So the executive orders we're looking at tonight are 141, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, E54. Anybody see anything that consecutively this was the first thing they went after?
Yeah. Well, I mean, they did spend what 200 million in the last 3 months on targeting trans people during high traffic TV times, which was
Right,
football, whether it was college or NFL. This is something that, like, as much as Trump denies that he ever looked at Project 2025, which I agree, he probably hasn't because he's not the one writing the policies.
right,
That's the reason why his vice president's who it is, because he is got a big tie-in to Project 2025.
right,
But when we look at this was the number one thing that the right-wing Christian nationalists believe they can go after, because if they can take trans people out, then that sets them up to go after a Obergefell and crumble
yep,
the rest of the civil rights movement that doesn't just impact LGBTQ plus people, but people of color and women. So
right.
this is the whole playbook that they're going on, and that's why they're the first ones up.
Right, right. Because I mean, you start with one and then you consecutively move away and keep stripping, which we'll go into some of these that are already doing that. So the
Yeah,
next executive order, 14169, revoking non-discrimination protections. Issued on January 21st, this order revoked federal civil rights protections and DEI initiatives for LGBTQ plus federal employees and employees of federal contractors. It reversed protections for federal government employees and LGBTQ employees of federal contractors that were extended through previous executive orders. Now, this has already been challenged as well. The National Association of Diversity Officers in Higher Education versus Trump. This
and
case challenges. Go
I was
ahead.
going to say, and I believe both of these cases are lambda legal that is challenged.
I
This is
think I believe they are.
everybody's probably ever heard of Lambda Legal. Lambda Legal has been a nonprofit that has been doing LGBTQ plus rights
For a long time.
from the dawn of time, as far as everything. And everybody wants to talk about the ACLU and all these other organizations. Lambda Legal has been the ones that have stood in the breach for queer rights from the start.
Right. You're muted.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is we could focus some efforts toward Lambda Legal as far as,
Yes.
fundraising, getting some attention on them.
Yeah, because the ACLU, granted, they made history. They had the lovely trans man testify not too long ago in the Supreme Court, first ever, historic, right?
Right.
Had to be a trans man before a trans female, but no, he did a wonderful job. I can't ask for as good of a job he did. There's no way I could have
Right.
done. I would have lost the quorum in by 3.5 seconds, but no, Lambda Legal, yeah, there's something honestly too, a program that you can look that's real close to you. It's a national program, but a lot of its headquarters out of Oklahoma is the Rainbow Youth Project.
Yeah, I'm familiar. I'm connected with them.
Okay, yeah, I've talked to Larry and stuff a few times, and yeah.
Yeah, so with this one, the case that I guess the diversity officers in higher education, the case challenges the constitutionality of the executive order, arguing that it violated the First and Fifth Amendments. The court issued a preliminary injunction preventing the enforcement of key aspects of the order. The confliction. This order revokes federal civil rights protections for LGBTQ plus and federal employees, conflicting with the Bostick versus Clayton County again ruling that that discrimination based on gender identity is a form of sex discrimination under Title VII. So again, like for the most part, the ones that are violating, like they violate this most recent
Well,
literally this precedent set in 2020.
Yeah, they're going to say one that 2020 doesn't have precedent because it's so new, and this is them getting their second, third, fourth, and fifth bite at the apple.
But it's not on civil rights. I mean, civil rights has been there since 1964.
Yeah, but so was Roe versus Wade.
True, 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 true. Okay, so the next executive order, and the rest of the executive orders, unfortunately, so far, I did not see that there were court challenges. The first two are the only ones that I've actually seen court challenges so far on. Doesn't mean they're not in development. So the next one is on gender ideology. This order declared that the United States would recognize only two biological sexes and directed federal agencies to remove all statements, policies, regulations, forms, communications, and other internal and external messages that promote or otherwise inculcate gender ideology.
I believe this one is, but I think it's through the passport legal
Okay.
case.
Yeah, and so that's what I was thinking.
But I think it's through that. And
Mm-hmm.
this is also the order that erased us from all government websites.
Right? Which that
Well,
right there, that they removed whether it was talking about whether it was safe for you to travel, your health care, research,
the State
everything.
Department and CDC were the first two that we noticed. We are reinstated back on the CDC, and
Right.
they had a nasty notice over there saying, well,
Yep.
we LGBTQ people because this mean judge told us to.
Right. Yeah. No, I saw that. I saw that he had to have his little disclaimer that we disagree. We don't believe this exists. And it's just kind of like,
Yeah.
whatever. Talk to the hand. And Derek actually, Casey said that he loves the shark on the show.
Oh, yeah, Blaha, yeah. I've been looking one forever, and I lived in Moore, Oklahoma, and there is not a IKEA anywhere close. And finally, on our trip, we were down at the airport, and I was like, "We're going to stop, and I'm going to get my shark that I've been wanting for years."
There you go. Hey, look, I have an octopus
Yeah,
currently. So it was one of my past dogs, but it still stays up at the head of my bed like
yeah.
her placekeeper.
Baja holds a special heart in the trans community.
Hmm.
It's a very iconic for us. And
You want to share?
Jeff the land shark is another thing that's kind of becoming iconic in our community.
That's cool. Okay, so let's go on to the next executive order on military service. This order barred transgender individuals from serving in the military, reversing previous policies that allowed trans people to serve openly. It mandated the discharge of transgender service members within 30 days of identification.
Mm-hmm.
This order mandates the discharge of trans service members within 30 days of identification, conflicting with previous policies that allowed trans individuals to serve and the protections provided under Title VII, again, of the Civil Rights.
Well,
So
and let's get into, I kind of want to bring something, we want to talk about fraud, waste, and abuse as far as what they want to focus on, right?
Right.
Obama spent a lot of money. They commissioned RAND, which is a think tank that studied this for multiple years. Not only found that it did not impact any readiness, it actually showed that letting them openly serve improved readiness, created more outside the box thinking, and so much so, like, they even created some PT testing and stuff out of it that the Air Force did. And after 2 years, there was no difference between a trans female and a cis female, other than a slight runtime, which I think her name's Christine out of Australia has done more research on this that even shows around this 2 to 3 year mark, that even drops off because our cardio goes to shit.
Right. Because of the hormone differences.
Yeah,
which is
our red count really screws us on HRT.
Yeah. Because mine is trans male. I'm not as familiar with the other side, but I do know that it does greatly impact that. And I do know we've talked about the differences in sports, and the reason why, like when the Olympics came out and certain social media groups were trying to label certain people trans that were not, right? And we had discussed that, right? And kind of went through, again, the hormones, and that here you have the Olympics committee, the NCAA has their own, the NFL, or not NFL, but you've got different leagues that have their own policies that have created this, that have been in place for decades.
Yeah, they have the
IOC, a decade.
National Olympic Committee.
Right.
They're the ones that set standards for General Olympics, and then each committee under that, so like cycling, boxing, all of them set their own individual
Right.
standards to one meet the minimum IOC, but they can go higher than IOCs.
Right. Because we even explained, like, there have been runners, female runners at times that honestly, because their hormones, would show that they'd be excluded
Oh yeah,
because of the fact that they were out of the hormone
in
range.
1996, they did a study, and they did a genetic study. They found I think it was like 25% of female athletes had genetic anomalies of where they would not be genotyped as purely cis male, that they would have fallen somewhere on the either a karyotype or intersex spectrum.
Wow. Yeah. No.
The fact
It
is,
just
I know
it
that
just goes back to that we go back
because
to a
I'm a trans
spectrum,
person.
right?
Like, that's how much, like, I didn't know I was going to get a non-recognizable degree by becoming trans.
Right? Right? Okay, so let's go on to the next executive order, which was on identification markers. This order reversed the policy allowing trans individuals to change their gender markers on passports and other federal identification documents. It mandated that all federal identification documents reflect the sex assigned at birth.
Yeah, this hit. I was kind of surprised on how hard this hit the community, as far as a lot of people didn't prepare for this.
Right?
One out of all of them, this was the one we kind of were already aware that was going to happen. I mean, that and one is EO1, and then this one were the ones that we most knew were going to happen pretty quick.
Right?
But then again, it's like, if you have a passport, it's not like you can always choose exactly when you're going to renew it.
Right?
I never had a passport. In Oklahoma, you can't self-identify. And before Stitt become governor, you could actually get your gender markers and birth certificate changed. And that was even before the gender X marker thing that blew up and caused the Southern Baptist Church in Oklahoma to get their panties in a wad, and then complain about that. And then, of course, Stent, did what he did. But before then, you had to have a full sex change before you could have done that.
So
And I'm so glad we had moved away from that.
I'm sorry, I have dogs in here. So my experience with our legal team at the Oklahoma Quality Law Center is they've been able to move forward with gender marker changes on birth certificates, et cetera, because the loophole, if you will, is he says that it had to be M or F on.
Yeah.
So,
last I talked to the equality group, they said they could do it on IDs, but they could not do it to birth certificates. Because my birth certificate, as far as I know, I'm never going to be able to change it.
Yeah. Well, we are going to find out in April from us, so I'll let you know.
Okay, yeah, and if it works and you got a connection, I would love that.
Okay, so then the next executive order was on TRICARE coverage. This order directed TRICARE to stop covering gender-affirming care, including hormone therapy and puberty blockers, for all beneficiaries, including youth and adults. It also removed these services for family members of veterans.
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt. This is something where I'm going to be very transparent, and I'm going to call out both sides.
Okay.
For trans youth that were beneficiaries of service members under TRICARE, under when Biden signed the last NDAA, which, if for those who are not in the know, that's what funds the DoD. Biden signed an order that was passed through, that was supported by both parties, and passed the House, that stripped gender affirming care away from service members' children.
Right.
So, yes, this EO enforces that part and goes further. But I want to point out that this was prior to Trump for some of this, because
right.
I'm not going to play. I don't play sides, but I'm very aware what side is going to be harm reduction. I guess that's the
Right.
best way I can put it.
I believe this is when they passed the budget for this, that this was the holdup, that this is what they kept having. It kind of kept getting stalled because they wanted to put this in there, and everybody was like, some people were fighting against it, and
Mhm.
it was like more and more people gave in and said, okay, no, we'll just agree to get it
Well,
passed.
they gave in, which also ties into the news lately, is because of Ukraine funding.
Right.
I did the Ukraine funding. The Democrats knew this was the last time they were going to get Ukraine funding across the goal line, and they sold us out because honestly, we're not a red line for them, and we never were. I mean, you can just look at the last election cycle to show that trans people are not a concern for the Democratic Party.
No, they aren't. They aren't. Um, and I do want to say that so for this order, there is a confliction because I do expect at some point you will see some sort of lawsuit go forward because the Affordable Care Act, Section 1557, prohibits discrimination based on race, color, national origin, sex, age, or disability in certain health programs and activities. This includes protections for trans individuals in healthcare settings. So
But it's
you're
not conflict
conflicting
with
with
them that
certain.
they're going to get rid of the Affordable Care Act.
That's going to be a hard one. You got to have something to replace it with.
You
And he's
say
never
that,
been
but
able to
you
come
got the
up with a
Medicare and
replacement. He
Medicaid.
always says he has an idea of it, but you got to have something to
Well, they
replace it with.
don't. They
I
don't.
know.
They can just go back to Affordable Care Act, and Optum can just kill everybody by denying all of the care, and the Blue Cross Blue Shield and the rest will join in. But
And they have to overturn EMTALA first.
yeah, no, and it's going to be a challenge, and I'm being a little flippant. I
No,
will,
I know.
but I'm just saying the conflict to them is not there because they're going to do it.
Right. Right.
And they don't care how it affects people because they're going after Medicare and Medicaid, even though they say they're not.
Right. Right. They are.
They can cut out of those committees is Medicare and Medicaid and SNAP's benefits, which
Yep.
I don't think the farmers know how much that's really going to impact them because that's where a lot of the grants that weren't the agricultural department or USAID funds, their SNAP benefits.
Yep. Yep. Oh, there's a lot of different. People
I'm
don't
sorry,
understand how it all works.
I'm probably too deep into this just to like this is all off my head. Like I didn't.
Oh no! Because I'm telling you, we're going to keep going. So on this, so the last executive order that I had was 74, which is on VA benefits. This order stated that trans veterans who have already retired from service would have their honorable discharges removed and their VA benefits revoked.
That's not going to go through.
No.
I don't know. That won't. Because they can't take my honorable discharge away from me. That would be. I can't remember the legal terminology for that, but that's like going back in time to strip something away that you've already honorably earned.
Right.
And that this is the one thing like I don't put a lot of fear that the Supreme Court is going to do, and this might be me being a little too generous to the Supreme Court, but I don't think this is a precedent that they're going to uphold because if they do it for us, how are they going to do it for? I mean, one, as much as I don't like the VFW, I don't think the VFW would let this go through.
Right. I don't think so either. I really don't. And I've told, because there are a lot of things that give me pause, and I'm like, okay, but your people aren't necessarily getting how these correlate,
Mm-hmm.
and how entangled they are that you can't just enmesh some of the things that he wants to enmesh. He's
Mm-hmm.
just kind of throwing spaghetti at the wall. And one of the things, and this is like silent the counter thing. So this is one of them. So on December 21st, he also put out a few revoked or rescinding executive orders of previous executive orders that were out there. So the first one,
But he went further than most any other president has in the past.
right. So rescinding executive order 11246. 11246 was issued by President Johnson in 1965.
The
and
civil
has
rights.
been right and has been amended over time to prohibit discrimination on the basis of race, religion, sex, national origin, as well as sexual orientation and gender identity. The order protected employees of federal contractors and subcontractors. On January 21st, Trump issued an executive order revoking Executive Order 11246 and amended to include protections from sexual orientation and gender identity discrimination. The new executive order not only removes protections for LGBT employees of federal contractors and subcontractors, but, and I got to roll my sheet up, also protections from discrimination based on race, religion, sex, and national origin. And
Mhm.
that is not going to fly.
I mean, it flies perfectly with the Republican Party. Like
It
it's
does.
aligned with their. It's been aligned with the GOP platform for the last like 15 years.
That I
Like,
agree on, but it doesn't go with
um,
it's not with our Constitution.
oh no, well, and it is aligned to our Constitution until after a certain Civil War that happened, and then there was amendments and stuff put in,
Right?
but and even more recently, like the civil rights or the women's rights movement, which, as we're talking about, ran coincidentally with the LGBTQ plus rights and civil rights
Right?
of the 60s. And I think that's what a lot of people don't understand is we learn a lot about MLK Jr. and Malcolm X and all this. And we even the women's lib movement, we learned a little bit, but not as much as we do about the civil rights movement
Right?
of that I was just talking about. You never hear about the LGBTQ plus movement and how, believe it or not, like it was Black trans people and trans people that was a lot of times the underlining catalyst that kicked that
Yep.
off. Because what gay men were doing, they were putting their suits on, holding up signs and walking down the street saying, see, we can look like you.
Right?
And the fact, and this is where I'm going to kind of going back to one of the previous ones, is when we got removed from Stonewall.
Yes.
And then we got just recently removed from a memorial I wasn't terribly familiar with, like I knew about, but in DC, that was also that. But one that is California is doing is putting on the registry is Compton Cafeteria, which is another one that happened well before Stonewall. That was happened in San Francisco in the Tenderloin, and that was actually a cop harassing a trans person at that time. Didn't like it, and cop got coffee thrown on him, and then there was a big riot.
And we talked about Polly Murray a couple of weeks ago, and she was talking about, quite frankly, women's rights and queer rights, because she didn't even understand that about herself at that time. Like there wasn't even, we were talking about, there wasn't even language for that, but she was sitting on buses and sit-ins in restaurants almost decades, multiple decades before the civil rights movement. Like the women in the civil rights movement, like we didn't even know who she was.
Yeah, I mean, the fact is, like, and I want to take away anything from MLK Jr. or Malcolm X or any of those prominent people, but the vast majority of those movements were female led. It
Right?
wasn't until a prominent male stepped in that those movements got traction.
Right? Right? Because we talked about it, Marshall Thurgood, like he had used his argument was with her research, and then he didn't even mention her. It
And
took Bader
he
Ginsburg to
moved
come in and
online
then say,
and,
"Hey, by the way," right? Well, he didn't. He was wanted his attention,
mm-hmm.
and at the time, I mean, anyone, quite frankly, was trying to get attention, right? So it made sense, but at the same time, you couldn't even drop like a little mention. And that was kind of what she had said that she learned in law school, was that like I went in knowing I was going to come out a civil rights activist, but when I came out, I was also a hardcore feminist,
Mm-hmm.
because it wasn't just that she found that it was white was inferior or black was inferior to white, but it was that women were now inferior to men. And really it's every gender spectrum under male is considered inferior. Let's be
Well,
honest.
a white cis male, you're at you're somewhere lower than them. The most incompetent, most unqualified white male is deemed to these individuals, these movements, as being superior than the most intelligent person from any minority class.
Right.
I
Which
mean,
is ridiculous.
we can go back to Taft on this, honestly. And Taft was credited as being a progressive at the time that followed Teddy Roosevelt. But Taft was the one that started branding the Southern agenda, or the Southern crap. My brain went blank. But that was where it was termed, and that's where it started, was with Taft, and that was also where the Latin America stuff started too, with Taft, because it was the dollar diplomacy.
Mm-hmm.
Taft was the one that fired Gifford Pinchot, which is something I know from my undergrad. He was the first chief of the National Park Service and Department of Interior. And he was also I think he was French trained forester. And he hit it in with Teddy Roosevelt. And he's the one that set up national parks and forestry and stuff that they took from the BOR, and actually created a way where these lands could be productive, as far as where we could still harvest some stuff from them, but maintain the beauty. When Taft fired him, the mining companies and stuff went into and stuff. So, but we can also look at that time. That was also the start of a lot of, because this is, we're in the, moving into the 1920s. Well, what was happening in the 1920s?
Moving to depression.
We were in the Depression and the Dust Bowl and all that, but we also had the flapper movement.
Right.
So these movements that we think are so dear and so old, they are old, but they were not codified in law until the 60s and 70s.
Right. Much, much later. And and now we're looking at, this was something that's being rescinded from the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, the next one, I'm trying to think how far back is the next one. The next one only goes back to like 2012, I think, as far.
Yeah, pretty much all the rest of them go back into the 90s to 2000s, because queer
Oh,
people.
no, this is 69. This is 69 as well. The next one is 69. The next one, he rescinded 13672, issued by Obama in 2014, that amended two prior executive orders to extend protections from employment discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. The first order added sexual orientation and gender identity to the list of protected characteristics in Executive Order 11246, as described above, that we talked about. 1136.
And that was amending one, the one that Tom Hanks played. I can't think of his name. It was a gay man.
Forrest Gump?
No. And they went to the Supreme Court, and he got his rights to work because he was
Philadelphia.
Yeah, that kind of derived from that. And then they've just slowly been including more as time went on.
Right, because this one was based on that you couldn't have discrimination based on personal characteristics. And this was first issued by President Nixon in 1969 to protect federal government employees from discrimination based on race, religion, sex, national origin, disability, and age. It was amended to include sexual orientation as a protected characteristic by Clinton in 98. Obama amended it in 2014 to include gender identity. And then Trump's executive order revokes both of them, removing both protections for gender identity discrimination and from the federal employment. So it's like he's rescinding orders that go back to, again, the 60s.
Yeah. And here's the thing. As much as we have a very negative connotation on Nixon, I mean, he did things about, like lead and things of that nature, the EPA. Nixon did a lot of great things. I mean, honestly, today he would have been more left than what Kamala Harris's presidential term was.
Right.
As much corruption as that was, even he's like, well, we can't completely be mean to these queer folks over here. Which is astonishing to me, that how much everything has moved and swung back. Because, I mean, we look at America, like and we were talking about the 1920s earlier. Go look at America in the 1920s, and a certain German startup political movement was coming and doing visits to America.
Yep.
And they were looking at those people and saying, those people are too harsh for us.
That's not terrifying at all.
No, the only thing that they went different is instead of like slave camps that they worked them until they died, they just accelerated it with the oven part of it. But
right.
Experimentation and all that, which I can't even say they were the first ones to do experimentations, because we did that to slaves of that time too. So like we are taking a giant step back in America.
We are. We
are losing hundreds of years of progress, and we're done a lot of it in 2 months. How much we keep after this 2 months, we don't know yet, because the courts have to decide. But then again, who's going to enforce the courts?
Mm-hmm.
That's
the
executive branch is the one is in charge under the Constitution to enforce court rulings.
Yeah, no, what they wanted a total backwards trajectory.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, you know, we all have nostalgia, right? Like, I'm Gen X, and I think that my generation was awesome. Like, I think how I grew up was great, and that doesn't mean that everything of that time period was great, but that's my nostalgia because that's my experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, theirs too. But
everybody thinks Andy Griffith and Leave It to Beaver were that time period.
That was fiction.
Those were progressive things of that time, because they were trying to show a better face on TV,
right?
Because of the poverty and struggle those people were having at that time,
right?
Something hopeful to look at,
right? Absolutely.
You have Brent Wade. Casey said hello.
Hey, Brent. Yeah,
he's on YouTube.
I know Brent. Me and him used to work together, so he's in this in a way that y'all are very familiar with.
I was going to say, so some of the stuff that I looked at was like the lack of and we had talked about this on the phone, was just like the lack of what was being sent down from the Pentagon. Like, how do we, so here's all the flurry of executive orders. Now, how do we actually send all this out? Because like, and I put like inconsistency in the implementation across different departments, the ambiguity in policy language, because each department was then able to go, okay, so how does this definition, it's so broad, how does it fit our actual policy, and how do we carry it out? I guess explain some of your experience with that, with the confusion.
I mean, one, it's been chaos. Every day you go into work, you're checking your email, you don't know what's going to pop up. You're hearing stuff, you're hearing, rumor mill is the best that we have a lot of times in this type of scenario, unfortunately. And it's complete chaos. I mean, stuff like, we didn't even know whether we're going to be able to put up certain displays about stalking, because like we have to put up stuff that like is like giving stuff out for like stalking, giving out stuff for like teen violence and things. We didn't even know if we could do that. Like,
so then who helps?
Well, for example, the sexual assault people in the DOD, they could not train service members and civilians that they hired or were doing collateral duty in that to be able to serve other service members that reported that they were raped, whether it was by another service member out in town, any of that. Like, they stopped all that because they mentioned, queer people or LGBTQ plus, because I'm going to use that interchangeably. The LGBT people can get mad at that all they want, but that's what I want to do. But they did it because that was in the curriculum, because they were talking about, hey, these people can be raped too.
Right.
So it's greatly impact that. It's greatly impact like the bathroom talk is still like kind of out there. It's more in some areas than others. I mean, like Washington and Oregon and California. I know that it's not been as a big priority as them as it has other areas. Like, I don't know what it's like to go on Tinker Air Force Base right now, but I don't know if you're going to be able to use the bathroom if I'm myself, like.
Right.
And you gotta look. Most military bases usually don't have gender neutral bathrooms.
No.
Military is very much your A or B, pick one. And this is where the non-binary thing is kind of plagued documentation in the military, but not necessarily impacted the military. It's just filling out paperwork.
Right.
So like this whole thing is just chaotic. Like you walk in and you're trying to like read people's faces. You're trying to get up to your office and lock the door, put your card in the computer and see, am I getting fired today? 1. 2, what craziness is dropping around by OPM today? What craziness is dropping, what command orders coming down? Is the command, some commands are pre-active and some are reactive. So like what's good on one base might not be good on the other base.
Right.
Because of how different commands are reacting to this.
And that was what I was, and that's why I said it was just chaotic from the orders that were sent down. Because yeah, from base to base, and it can be from department within that base on how they're treating. So again, like there's all this, I wouldn't say necessarily miscommunication. It's just again not clear communication.
Well, I'll go into it. This I have to leave some things out because privacy and everything else. But the fact is, I had a service member do a year-long deployment. Had been working before this deployment to start transition services. They said, we're going to wait, and when we deploy, we're going to give you your shot. That service member is like, good to go. I'm good with it, because they were all military. Like, that's all they wanted to do. They loved their job. They loved everything about it. Now that person is coming to me feeling betrayed, feeling lied to, and now they feel like they have no home and trying to figure out how they're going to be able to provide for their family because they're losing the only income and insurance that they have. Because it's very rarely to be in the military where you can go pick up a second job.
No.
You're still muted.
My ex-husband was military, 82nd Airborne, and he had to be ready. Like if they got the call to go, they had to be ready within 18 hours, boots up, we're going, flying out to another country. Yeah, so there wasn't that ability to get a second job.
Yeah, when you're on red team, like it's tough because so you have like the Army does it with the 82nd because the airborne all that. Marines do it with Muse. So if you're the next one on the MU, you're on that red team assignment. So if something comes up that the MU can't do it, you're the ones next, and you're jumping on a plane and you're going across the world to do whatever. And it is like they have to know where you're at 24/7. And damn it, if they call a freaking muster and you're not there in like 30 minutes,
oh, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
Big time, big time. My ex got a couple of speeding tickets along the way, trying to make sure that he got it back within that 2-hour recall because it had been buzzed and he was further than 2 hours, and he had to push the speed to get back in time so he didn't get in trouble. And actually, again, got 2 tickets from it.
And having a few drinks, like
right, same thing. Now, so I was looking through some of these. Let's see. So conflict with federal laws, precedents that protect trans rights. Again, civil rights, Bostick. We talked about those. So trans veterans. Trans veterans who have already retired from service are facing uncertainty regarding their honorable discharges and their VA benefits. The lack of clear directives on implementing executive orders have left many veterans in limbo, unsure of their status and access to benefits. So I guess, do you have any background on veterans benefits, like hearing
Oh,
about any of that yet?
I'm service connected.
Right.
I'm service connected in multiple ways. I was fortunate, but not fortunate enough to get 100%. But no. What is VA disability? Let's look at that first, right? Let's start at the front. When I sign a contract, in that contract, government says if they damage me, they're going to pay me disability through the VA to make me whole for what they did.
Right.
That is what VA disability is. That is because I sign a blank check that has my life as part of that collateral that could be there.
Right.
That is them saying, we're going to do this, because if they don't, let's be honest, they're not going to be able to recruit.
Right.
But let's go in how this was created. This was created after the end of World War I, when General Butler stopped something very similar we're seeing now, where they were going to take away VA, just basic, very little like veterans benefits. And out of that, with General Butler, it created the VA. And then that's where like they got some benefits and stuff like that. But that led to the creation of the VA.
Right.
And that was basically stopping a bunch of World War I veterans that were camping on Congress's lawn in tents with guns and everything else, ready to storm the Capitol and kill people.
Woo. Where have we seen that before?
Yeah, and he was, well, not only that, he was being propositioned by the opposition to let that happen. And because he knew his Constitution and he knew his oath, he did not do that.
Right.
And he would be the equivalent of probably what I would say Mattis would be today, as far as beloved by the men and stuff of that generation.
Right.
That he was kind of that, probably more so, honestly. But yeah, like we got VA benefits through blood, and it
Right.
wasn't blood overseas. It was blood here on the homeland.
Right.
I'm a big believer that if you serve this country, I don't think what do you want? Take it. I would never sign up to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, what is it, 1% of the population that does, if that. I was raised by a veteran.
Mm-hmm.
My husband's a veteran. It doesn't mean I love every single thing that our country has stuck its nose in, or the lives it has sacrificed to achieve certain goals. But at the end of the day, like, for anybody to have signed up to do that, I don't care what you want to do with the money. You want to chop your nose off? Chop your nose off. It's your nose. Like, that's what you get for offering to sacrifice your life for my freedom.
Yeah. No, and so that is the start of how VA benefits were, and that's what VA benefits are as far as the disability side. And then on that, it says if you get a service connection disability, then we won't just pay the money, but we'll give only you, not your family, not anybody else, only you, health care.
Right.
And then if you're only until you got like 40 or 50%, I'm trying to remember to cut off there, you only get care for your service connection. And if it's anything outside your service connection, you have to pay out of pocket.
Right.
And if you get over that 40 or 50%, I think it's 40, then you get all your health care. And I say this, you get quite a bit of health care for free, but it doesn't necessarily cover everything. I can't go to the VA doc and go, I want this, and they're going to give it to me. There's a lot of red tape and stuff to determine, especially on treatments that they're approved treatments, but they're not like well-founded treatments.
Mm-hmm. Because then you'll have to go, but is that, I don't know if it's for all treatments that are considered that, but I know, for example, say you have a stage 4 cancer and a drug that's been approved for a stage 3, but not for a stage 4, then you can only get that medication if you go to Bethesda, Maryland, and receive it there and there only as a veteran. And that was because my
Or
dad was a veteran, and that was the kind of service. Like, we waited 9 weeks for red tape to get his chemo approved
and
because of that.
it's not always like you have to go to this one place, but sometimes it is.
Right?
And, you know, say like burn care, right? If you had burns from an IED blast or something, you
Right.
might go to San Antonio. Same with TBIs. You might go to San Antonio.
Right.
You know? So it's one of those things that it's not like you just go to and get it. Like when I got out, it was 3 months to just get an appointment. It wasn't to go see somebody. It was to get an appointment.
Right.
So like it's not like it's gotten way better since I've been out. Like VA has done a tremendous job on picking up and doing, but the VA can only do what Congress allows them to do.
Right.
So when we're talking about taking care from us, this goes back into the whole thing again, like appropriated money that is not being able to be spent, that Congress said it is going to be spent on, and it's not happening.
Right.
But this is where I don't believe, like, you can't, like I said earlier, you can't retroactively just come back and just say, well, you were honorable, we're going to be dishonorable now. Not only that, we also have case law precedent on this too, because the people that were kicked out or don't ask, don't tell, they were awarded back pay and benefits and stuff for that, because they had other than honorable and dishonorable, depending on branch of service and stuff at that time. They were able to get their elevated to honorable and all that. So we have court cases and case law that is there, but then again, we've seen the Supreme Court not honor that.
Right. Right.
And we're the icky people. So, I mean, the Supreme Court's been very good of like, we'll give it to these people, we're not this people. The Casey Cake lawsuit was a perfect example of that.
Right.
Because of and it was a hypothetical case that should have never even made it to the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court is not there to test hypotheticals.
No. But they let it stand, and I didn't understand that one when it came out, that it was hypothetical. Like, that should have automatically been like, nope, that's gone. Wipe it off, and they left it.
The Supreme Court testimony, they treated it as if it was fact and happened, and ignored the previous finding that it was hypothetical.
Yeah. I try to be really careful with SCOTUS, because I feel like when you're watching these executive orders come out in such a flurry, and you know that they've not been vetted by a legal team that double checked and triple checked to make sure they weren't going against precedent and law.
They were vetted by was the Heritage Foundation legal team, and we've seen, I mean, the repeal of Roe v. Wade and Casey was that legal team,
right,
led by them. And the fact that a female is the head of that led that is the most mind-blowing part of that to me.
I'm mind-blown by a lot of it.
To me, I've met so many women, you know, in my time, in my life here in Oklahoma.
Oh, yeah. Oklahoma is,
Yeah. Just really buy into this idea that we're inferior, that we're supposed to be baby-making machines that are just thrilled to be doing it.
North Carolina too.
Right.
Well, what is the root of that? What is the root of that? Everything they accuse the queer community of, the church is doing.
Right.
They accuse the queer people of raping children. Well, who's actually raping children?
They are the ones.
Yeah, we covered that one too.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's one of those things, like the poisonous apple is the one that's being put on a pedestal as moral right.
Right.
And it's just rotten.
Yeah. It is.
I believe what was it? Between 7, you want the two men who have had 6 marriages and 17 children to establish what is considered the modern family or today's family values. By the way, last night that became 18 children and 6 wives. because
Well,
Musk had a 14th.
well, that's because they're judged on the Daniel standard because they're important men.
Yeah.
Right.
They're not.
Right.
They're judged on the commoner standard.
Right.
They're kings. We're
If that was a poor
Right.
black woman having that, or a poor black man having that many children,
Obama wouldn't even made it to the primaries if it would have been Obama.
I
And it wouldn't even made it to the primaries if he was just divorced and remarried once.
right.
Right.
100%.
Now, okay, so let's move into negative impacts. Because I know we're already at our hour, but I don't care. Healthcare access.
I have time. It's still early.
Okay. Okay, so healthcare access. The Department of Veteran Affairs has begun altering medical records to reflect sex assigned to birth rather than gender identity. This change has made VA facilities or faculties less welcoming to trans veterans and has ripple effects on the overall healthcare. For example, some vets have reported being denied hormone therapy and other gender affirming treatments. So,
Yeah.
what have you heard so far about the healthcare access?
So I have, like I said, I have ties with the VA. I'm still connected with people in the VA. I use the VA. The last memo that went out, at least I know to a large portion of the VA, is anything representing queer people is to be stripped off the walls. There's this one poster. I'm hoping to find it. I should have stole one a long time ago. It's the one with the U.S. flag and the trans pride flag on dog tags, and it says "We serve all who served." Yeah, those can't even be posted on the walls anymore. VA employees are being told they can't even wear lanyards that are pride flags. Like, so it's basically, yeah, it's becoming a thing where, like, you don't know where you're going to have one to the other. I mean, I'm unsure if a certain procedure is going to happen that I've been waiting for years.
Right.
And I'm just, every day I'm just kind of crossing my fingers that it goes through.
Right.
I will say, the VA that I use now, it's very understaffed, like every VA across the nation.
Yep.
And worse. There's not enough providers. There's not enough schedulers. There's not enough support staff. There's, it's there, and there's a method behind the madness, because they want people like Optum to take it over. And that's kind of where it's going. They want to privatize it, and they've been saying that for probably as long as I've been alive.
Right.
But yeah, it is very turmoil. Like, you go there and you're trying to go in and get where you're done. I will say, like, even before all this happened, I can go back to my healthcare records, and it was very well known that I was trans. I came out very publicly, and I was misgendered in all my medical notes by my primary care provider. So much so, my primary care provider stopped me being able to get transitional services when I got to where I moved to, and I refused to do it, and then saying, well, it's because I didn't do this one thing. When not only did I do it, I had screenshots of what I sent her, and I screenshotted the form that she was supposed to do that because I had access to the system at that time, and I knew how to use the system, and I knew what referral processes I had to use, and I still got denied those services. So I can't imagine with somebody that didn't have my privilege and my knowledge, how difficult that would have been.
Right. Right. And I'm hearing, so the second one that I've got here is loss of disability benefits. Trans veterans are losing their disability benefits due to the new executive orders. For instance, Max Bradley, a trans Navy veteran, expressed concerns about the potential loss of his disability benefits, which he relies on to pay his bills. This uncertainty has caused significant stress and anxiety for trans veterans and their families. Because I've got that mentioned linked into the resources, that was a recent article that he's come out and spoken out about.
It's not just trans veterans. It's every veteran that's 100% disabled. especially for those ones that are 100% not total permanent. So you can be 100% two ways in the VA disability system. You can be unemployable 100%, which means you're not total and permanent, but they review your stuff and say, yeah, you're broken enough, but we're not going to give you this. We're going to give you this 100%. And you can't work. And then you can be the 100% total and permanent, where you get 100% outright through playing the nickel and dime game with VA math, or what I refer to as math for Marines, because I think they looked at the math for Marines MCI to get their math skills. But like VA percentage, like I could go like an hour on that alone. But yeah, no, every veteran I know that has a brain and paying attention, and it's not been sucked into this cult-like mob mentality, they're scared to death because some of them are not going to be able to go back to work.
Right.
And now you take their Social Security away, any access to Medicare or Medicaid away, and now you take their VA disability away. And let's be honest, you're not getting rich off of VA disability.
No.
It does not pay you. It'll pay you barely enough to survive in Oklahoma. And that's saying a lot, because Oklahoma has the lowest cost of living in the nation. And even that, you're going to be struggling to pay the bills. If you have to pay a mortgage, a car payment, you have, say you have credit cards or something like that nature, like you're going to be really struggling to make it.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's something that I've been seeing it in a lot of the veteran community, and I have a very unique view in the veteran community, because, you know, like it's one of those things, once you come out trans, like you lose a lot of people that said they have your back until you died.
Right.
And you find out really who believe that when you come out. But yeah, like they're taking something that was promised to us away. And
right.
It's not trans people. Now, granted, this EO targets trans and queer people, but it's not. They're doing this. They're going after this for every veteran.
Right.
So that the VFW and the American Legion have come out about this. And these are the same organizations that supported a religious statue in an intersection that was owned by the city. Like they went and supported that statue of not being removed and placed somewhere else, because it was a violation of church-state separation.
Right.
I mean, we're not talking about literal bastion organizations.
No. So from the disability, so then we go into that loss of actual VA benefits. The executive orders have mandated the discharge of transgender service members within 30 days of identification. This has led to the removal of honorable discharges and the revocation of VA benefits to some trans veterans. This lack of clear directive from the Pentagon has left many in limbo, issues unsure of their status and access to essential services. And we had talked about this because I believe you said that you had gotten your email.
Yeah, I got my email, and I'm a little bit in the know compared, I think, to your average civilian that's kind of on the outside of this.
Right.
Yeah, trans people are going to be kicked out of the military unless they fit in this very narrow exemption. And as we've been seeing with the new SecDef, if you're not a white male or just a male, mainly if you're not a white male, and you're of anything of power and importance, you're getting replaced. He just removed another female 3-star. I don't know if we're going to have a female above a 1-star or 2-star here coming very soon. So yeah, they're getting removed. And here's something I want to do, and this is going to be where I advocate. If you're a trans veteran and you are affected by this, what I want you to do, I want you to go to your aid station, and every bump, boo-boo, whatever it is, if you've been playing hurt, go get it documented in your medical record. Even if this happens, doesn't mean it's going to happen forever. Go get it in your medical record. Then I want you to find the local VSO. And I will be honest, not all VSOs are created equal. Some are terrific, some are great, some are okay, and some are just sorry at the job. But if you have some medical knowledge and stuff, you can follow your own claims through e-benefits. But I want you to get that. If you've been playing hurt and you've been fighting off the med board, go through with it. Because if you get slotted in that med board, they have to finish the med board before discharging you. Because they cannot kick you out broke without some type of plan. Like, and this is just how the military's ran for a long time.
Right.
So, and then I want you to go and I want you to Google the CFR Title 38. Section 4 is where a lot of this is that you need. And that is the Bible for the VA and how they determine benefits and how they outline benefits. So I want you to go look at that. I want you to see what you have in your medical record and try to connect those in that title. And that's going to be you're not going to be 100% on guessing, but you'll at least kind of know a ballpark and what they're looking for. Because if you have a hurt back and they say bend over and touch your toes, and you do the military thing and bend over, touch your toes, and it leaves you not walking for the next 3 to 4 days, that's not what they want. They want you to move until you feel the slightest amount of pain and then stop.
Right.
But if you don't know that going into the exam, you're not going to get your rating.
Right.
So that's my advocacy, and that's something I want to bring, and for these veterans to know. I mean, even if you're not a trans veteran, the fact is you probably didn't know what the CFR Title 38 was.
Right. Exactly. And I guess, and of course, this is the biggest one, the mental health impact.
Mm-hmm.
The hostile environment created by executive orders has negatively impacted the mental health of trans veterans. The erasure of trans identities from official records and the denial of gender-affirming care have contributed to feelings of isolation, discrimination, and hopelessness among trans veterans. And I don't really even have to ask you. Like, it's a given.
Mm-hmm.
If you're being erased, if you're having your health care removed, if your job is being like you don't know you're going to provide for yourself and your family,
well,
your benefits are being taken.
We have historical data on this. There was a lot of study that was done on the gay male population back in the 70s and 80s. They had a very equivalent suicidal rating of what trans people do today. And they discovered in these studies, multiple studies were done on this, that once you had some acceptance and you had a place of safety, your suicidality goes down.
Right.
And we're seeing a repeat of that. It's just a different community. And so, yeah, we're going to see an increase of suicide. Like there's where I'm at, there was a suicide event happen. The name and stuff has not been released. And I'm just hoping it's not a trans person.
Right.
And the only reason why, you know, it could be a multitude of reasons that somebody does that. It's not just because you're trans or whatever. But right now, when you're being erased, and say you are that individual, that your only identity and the only thing you've been successful at is the military, and that's being stripped away from you.
Right. I mean, just having an honorable discharge stripped of you, regardless. I mean, and that is my thing. Like, forget the status, your identity. Like, you're having what you earned, what you fought for, stripped from you.
Well, let's look at what an honorable disability does. If you get other than honorable, you're denied a lot of care in the VA. If you get a general, you get a lot of care through the VA, but you don't get everything.
No.
So, and then, you know, administrative stuff, because you can be administratively discharged and discharged honorably.
Right.
Certain branches are historically not great at doing that. The Marine Corps is one of the prime examples.
Well, I mean, the fact that he's going so far as to say this is dishonorable.
Well, yeah, and let's be honest. This man can't even freaking show any cell in his body that has any honor. This man lied and got
Honor
out.
empathy.
He can't even remember what foot he lied about that had the bone spur in it. Like, so, and then you got Combat Camera, our vice president, that can't even go to Ukraine. So, in fact, I think he just got his passport. I heard something, I haven't verified that yet, when he become VP. I'm not 100% sure. Like, I haven't verified that independently, but it was something I read, and it kind of fits in a way. But yeah, it's one of those things that, yeah, if you don't get a honorable discharge, you lose a lot out. And this isn't just VA. These are jobs, not
Right.
even government jobs. When you fill out an employment form and you have an OTH or dishonorable, you're going to get questioned and you're going to get passed over a job, even if you're the most qualified individual for that job. Because they're not going to call you and go, hey, why did you get this? They're going to go, nope, I'm going to this person.
Right. You're going to automatically be like taken out of the pile just from having that on your record, and they don't even know why it's there.
You can be prosecuted on it because it's federal forms.
Yeah, it's a nightmare. And then I'd like to know how he's going to fill the military.
I honestly, with the most recent events, I don't know how we're going to fill recruitment. We are barely filling recruitment.
That's what I'm saying. We can't get recruitment. So how are you going to get a bunch of, and they want white males. How are you going to get a bunch of white males to take a job that pays
white males
jack?
are the lowest per capita serving individuals in the United States.
Yep.
The fact is, trans people make up 1%. And this is in the RAND study. This is what the RAND study found out. And this was before a lot of people were even openly able to serve.
Right.
RAND study found that 5% of the trans community enlist. We are one of the highest per capita individuals and groups that serves this country.
Wow.
And not only that, like when we look at the money, they want to argue about the money. 84 million a year is spent on ED meds. 15 million over 5 years has been spent on trans care.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So,
I argue about this one a lot because it's just like we waste quite a bit of money, and then what we consider care is not care. And my father was a veteran, and when he had his terminal cancer diagnosis, it took, I think it took, at least, you're talking about red tape, it took 3 or 4 months with an honorable discharge for him to get lined up with his services. It took him another 2 months to get into the VA. When he got in for his first appointment, they said, you're a stage 4. This is so bad. We're handing you off to Duke to do the surgery because we can't get to it in time before you die. And then
well,
went back to the VA to get his chemo that took another 10 weeks to get approved for.
And this is something people don't understand about the VA. The VA is the largest teacher of our future doctors and nurses. They teach more than anybody in the United States. And they are greatly integrated into every universal hospital or university hospital. Oklahoma City VA is the perfect example of this. Not only is the OU hospital right across the street, but there's a gangway to walk over the street to get into OU hospital. Like, you don't even have to like worry about traffic. You can just go straight through. And the fact is, like, so when I was getting gender affirming care out of OU or out of Oklahoma City, my doctor was a resident, like not even a full doctor, right? Just under residency. And I could only see him one day a week where I could schedule. And that's because the rest of it he was doing over at OU.
Yep.
So, like, this is something like your doctors, vast majority of your doctors that you see at the VA aren't full-fledged doctors yet. They're still collecting their hours.
Right.
Wow.
Like, they might have their degree finished, but they haven't done the licensing stuff yet.
Right.
The fact the largest social work employer in Oklahoma is the VA system.
Very
Wow.
So like without the VA, we don't get future trained doctors. We lose out. Without
and that's the thing they're not thinking about. Every single thing that we see with this is so much broader and so much bigger. And so many people want to just focus on the trans stuff, but then you look at the things that are to affect so many other people, the kind of rippling effect this is going to have, the domino effect it's going to have, and the disasters it's going to have for all people. And that's why, you know, I know Amber and I, and of course you, Casey, are so about queer liberation. Queer liberation is liberation for all.
Yeah. Right.
Because it pulls down, creates a domino effect.
Well, just look at it. You attack trans females, because that's really what they're going after, because they don't believe trans females really exist.
Right.
They do confuse tomboys.
Right.
Yep.
And I don't say this to put down my masculine trans brothers, because they are in this and they are being greatly affected by this.
Yes,
but we're aware of the privilege.
But
right. Because we both have trans sons, and that's kind of what we have both talked about, is that they don't go after the trans males because they just, oh, you're not a man. They ignore them. It's the trans women that they go after.
Because the bathroom thing is, a trans male, because of HRT, is very effective for the trans male side versus going the other side post puberty.
Right. Right.
And it's lucky few can hit that so-called passing marker that so many people like kind of strive for. Not everybody, but so many do. But on the trans male side, it's not always perfect, but it's a little bit more effective, because testosterone is a strong hormone and it really alters you, and it does it pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But a lot of them, like if you're full beard and all that stuff, you're going to probably be able to go use the bathroom, not get harassed. But if you're slightly a masculine looking female that uses the bathroom, you're going to start getting harassed, because they're going to call you a trans woman.
If you're tall, think about how many tall women, like broader shoulders. I mean, they're out there. My stepmother is 6 foot tall.
Yeah.
She's a tall woman, you know.
I'm a large human. I'm a large human. When I started HRT, I was 6 foot. I've lost a few inches due to bone density loss. And that's, you know, one thing that all the transphobe gender criticals don't realize, that trans women lose bone density.
Right.
And I've shrunk a few inches because of that. I'm still a fairly big human, but there's a few cis women I've been in there, because I'm like, I need to hang around more with you. You give me better vibes. Like, you make me feel better about my transness.
Right.
It helps affirm my gender and stuff, because I'm like, it clicks that light on, like, not everybody is 5'4" and a size 2, right? You know, and I'm being, you know, generous on the size too. Like,
well, I mean, we talked about it last year, that there was a case of a woman, and I think this was like early last year, if I'm not badly fooled, where there was a woman who had been harassed and attacked. And actually, I can't remember if she was attacked in the bathroom or if she was arrested, but it was because they thought she was trans, and she had undergone a double mastectomy and was recovering from cancer. And that was the reason why they did it. But that's what we were getting at. I said, when you pass these bathroom bills, it's affecting more people than you think it is. It's harming people.
That is what they want, because they want the hyper feminine. They want to put everybody in dresses. They want to put everybody in high heels, 24/7 makeup.
Yeah.
You better have your perm in, because damn it, you're not going to fit in.
That's right.
And you know, and God forbid if you leave the house and you're not escorted.
Right. I mean,
the fact is, like, I've been to Iraq, I've been to Afghanistan. I've seen the Taliban, I've seen ISIS, I've seen all flavors of that in between. And this Republican Party wants that.
Yes, they
for
do.
the United States.
Yes, they do. They'll say they don't. they'll be like, oh, no. As long as you behave like this, we won't do that.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
As long as you behave like this, go back to the kitchen, shut
Right.
your mouth, and get the ass kicked out of you. Don't tell
So
anybody.
you're
Right.
not going to, but it's under duress.
Well, the
Right.
fact, like, let's look at that, like domestic violence laws.
Oh, get me started. Get Amber
Like,
started.
Well, I mean, they're trying to go back about they've talked about doing the federal no fault divorce and rolling that back, and we know for a fact that that was how it cut suicide levels of women by 13% when that went into effect, because they could leave a violent relationship, whereas before they had no way to.
the fact Devers in Oklahoma, out from not very far where I was born and grew up,
Yeah.
had a bill that was going to make it where even if you proved you got the crap beat out of you, you could not get a divorce.
And you had to go through more marriage counseling.
Yeah. Which is counter to the therapeutic model and what you're supposed to do to
Right.
violence relationships.
But if it's marriage, God forbid, no, because he gets to own that, right? He gets to say so.
It wasn't even counseling; it was religious counseling, and in Oklahoma, you can do religious counseling and not hold a license.
Yeah, I will become a religious counselor. Watch me.
Yeah, I mean, I like the Church of Bacon. I'm sure I could swing it that way.
Yeah, I'm just gonna start offering my service.
Yeah. Okay, so Casey, they put up here, and I'm asking you this because they're asking, are there trustworthy veteran-aligned NGOs that you're aware of? Because like, I could look some up, but I'll be honest, like right off the top of my head, I'm just not,
So
nothing's clicking.
One, they changed their name recently. It's called like Modern Military. It used to be called something else. They are come out very early on in their creation of being trans supporting for veterans.
Okay.
In fact, they used to sell merch with that for their nonprofit. It's something I'm a member of as well. They put out weekly newsletters. They help do a lot of good things. It's not something I've been recently aware of. It was something I actually learned in some of my training when I switched positions. I learned about that. That would be the main one that I would say would be that. But here's something I'm going to say, like supporting these NGOs and stuff is great. We need to do that. But honestly, let's look at this. A lot of us don't have money to do that anymore.
Right.
Something I'm going to say and stuff that everybody in America that has any viewpoint that does not align with this new cult-like movement in the United States is we need to start creating local community networks. And those community networks need to be varied in skill, varied in age, varied in knowledge. And not only that, once you develop those communities, then you need to start developing mutual aid networks that fall outside of traditional, like what you would, dial 211 for.
Right.
And I say that is because those are going to go away if this trend carries forward.
Right.
And so is when you get those done, then you need to get to the community next to you. You need to connect with them. And we need to be connecting these networks across the United States. Because if we do not, we're not going to have anything.
Right.
So I'm helping out with a brand new Pride organization that apparently is my side skill that's being formed where I live. And this is something when I went to their first like open public meeting after they got their 501c3 charter put in. And this is something I talked to them about. Like, Pride's great. Pride's, I'm kind of wondering what Pride's going to be like this year, to be honest. Like, it's going to be a weird Pride this year.
Yeah.
But this was something I was like, we need to build community. And if we don't build community, a Pride thing is great. But that's a one and done thing. But we have to do something that's year round. I mean, this is something that like 53rd and 3rd in New York City before it became rich people land. in New York City, Tenderloin in San Francisco, like Miami. I don't know the exact neighborhood in Miami. Oklahoma City, you got the neighborhood, right? Tulsa has its little thing. Dallas has its little thing. Like, those were why queer people could survive through everything when they could not be built. But we also know the history of those. Those were the places where cops came in and they checked, did you have your, New York City, for example, and this is what kicked off Stonewall, was
Right.
you have your 3 pieces of gender because they were hitting on, or they were going after a mass female. And the trans people and stuff next to them were like not having it. And that's what started everything off. And so, like, that is where we're heading again. Like, I'm trying to think of what 3 items of clothing I could wear. Are they going to count my socks or not? Like, you know, so like, it's one of those things, like, we're going back to that. And
That's where they want us to go back to.
well, we're going to go back to it because Democrats, let's be honest, the most simple thing the Democrats could do is drop decorum tomorrow, and it makes life harder for the GOP. And they have not done it. Keem Jeffries is still acting like it's just a normal congressional season. And this was supposed to be the replacement for Obama, right? And he's just up there, like, his social media thing he put out. Like, I'm crap on social media. I do not have that many followers. I don't have over 1,000 followers on any of my social media. And I have more knowledge than what Akeem Jeffries put out for his social media platform. So, like, to say that is just crazy to me. The fact is, like, there are things the Democratic Party could be doing. And I suggest everybody that's on this or sees this, you start calling your senator and your congressperson to drop the quorum. They need to start asking for a quorum vote on every time that there's something done in any committee or any floor activity. And if they don't have the quorum, by rules, they cannot go forward with that action until they have a quorum. Like, if they just did that thing and just stopped letting people do voice votes, everything has to be
Right.
a vote, you know, and it has to be recorded per person. Like,
I agree.
that's what needs to happen. And the Democratic Party can't even do that. They can't even be a speed bump.
Well, I think it's what some of the most progressive of them have been saying for a good
Right.
2 or 3 terms now.
So, I mean, I like AOC. I think AOC is kind of the model of what a lot of people need to be doing. Because not only did she walked door to door and did that. She is not taking any PAC, or she's taking a slight amount of PAC money, but it's been like more NGO PAC money.
Right.
And she owns no stocks.
Right.
And the fact is, she actually has written and passed bills. And that's something Bernie can't even really say.
Yeah, she's
right.
So, yeah, and then I can't think of her name, that lady out of Texas. I love her so much. The one that just, like, her head, just when she snaps at them, and when she got into it with Margie Tyler Greene, like, I love her.
Are you talking about Jackson Crockett?
Yes.
Yeah. Absolutely love her.
Like,
absolutely love her.
Yeah, Maxwell Frost, yes. The 2 Justins in Tennessee. I can never remember their last names, but the 2 Justins in Tennessee that they tossed them out and they got right back in.
Yeah.
I love them.
Well, and here, Zoe Zephyr is another example that.
Yep.
The thing is, like, what we've been seeing are state houses with these people, and across the United States, they're now doing in the federal houses.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because they are now kicking people out for decorum issues. But yet the Democratic Party still wants to play this decorum role. Because they're like,
Right.
well, if we don't do it, then they're going to do it to us. I'm like, they've already done it to you.
Right.
Right.
Newt
Just
Gingrich.
take the gloves off. Why are we keeping the gloves on? Like, take them off.
Or we're never, ever, ever going to fix this.
Nope.
No.
This is screwed for a long time. This is not 4 years.
And that's the thing. Everybody's, oh, it's just going to be 2 years. Yeah, good luck.
This is it for a while.
This is a runaway train. He is putting things in place that will take decades to undo.
The fact is, they just barred him by a court order to not where he can't get into the state voting stuff. Like, he's already doing it. He's already getting his tentacles in on it.
Yeah.
Yep. So, like, the fact is, like, I have to be hyper aware of this because I'm a trans person.
Right.
And the fact that somebody can come up to me and is like, well, I don't really follow politics. I'm like, that is a privilege that must be nice.
Right. Right.
Because I cannot live my life without knowing what's going on because I got to know how it's going to affect me tomorrow.
I don't believe anybody who says that. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. You just don't want to tell me the truth.
Well,
yes.
I don't know. I think there are people that are so naive because we got to look at Oklahoma, right? 46% of the state population voted.
Yeah.
Like, it has the lowest voter turnout of anyone in the nation. The fact is, like, this election had a low turnout compared to past elections. And the people, like, I want to take a moral stance. We don't have the privilege as this type of minority to take a moral stance. Everything we do has to be harm reduction.
Yeah.
I would love to have a new party tomorrow. But guess what? We don't create that party by running them for the president or running them for a House seat or a Senate seat. Until we get that party established on the local level. And I'm not even talking about this state as the local level. I'm talking about your school board. I'm talking about your county commissioner. I'm talking about that. Until we develop a party that is rooted there first, and we're talking about 15, 20 years before that can get maybe to the national level.
Right.
Until we get that started, we're never going to have a third party option.
Right.
And the left would be like, and I'm talking left as in true left, not American left. The left, if they would just remove their head from their rear ends and realize this and build this.
Yeah.
Like, we would have already had this years ago. But then again, if we start doing this, we're probably going to see what happened in the with the Red Scare. So it's a catch-22, but it is something we could do at the local level. And the only thing, if we have 100 different parties in each local level, well, guess what? They can come together, they can coalesce, they can create a national party, and they can have a national independent left party, and they can run them like that. Then they can get the low marker of where they can be nationally recognized and put on the next ballot the next year, and then we move forward. But until that happens, we're stuck with this two-party system. The fact is, the DNC, even with their new appointee, right? They've already said that we're not even going to remove PAC money for primaries, because if they do that, they lose control of the primaries, because then they can't outspend the person that is knocking on the door and saying, hi, I'm so-and-so, will you vote for me? And spend that 15 to 20 minutes at each door that will answer their door and talk to them and move forward. We've seen this in Oklahoma work.
Yeah.
Like, so, like, this is what, like, and here's the thing. Everybody's going to say, well, why don't you run for office? One, I'm a transhuman in the United States. That's one. Two, I've been working a government job. I cannot run for any political office as a government employee. I couldn't do it as a state employee.
I just have a really checkered past that I think would get brought up.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, is that a standard now? I mean, even Beto has DUIs that he fled from, you know, like.
First,
That's true.
no,
And I mean, and the thing
I
is,
mean, did you fly on a plane with Jeffrey
I
Epstein?
I will just say no, no, no. It's not that bad. I guess if I just threw it out there, maybe it would be impressive to people.
that's the thing. You have to own it up front. You have to show
Yeah.
how you change. And let's be honest, you don't become an addictions counselor without having a checkered past.
Right, right, right.
I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if addiction counselor has that is any good at it that doesn't come from it first.
For sure, for sure, for sure. I just don't feel like being on, anyway.
No, and I don't blame.
I love y'all
And
so way past over, and I have got something that I have to get to. Please
That's fine.
finish. I love you. I have to bounce out. Smooches and love. Casey.
Bounce out.
Yes, yeah, you know where to find me.
I sure do. See y'all soon.
Bye.
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 She's such a mess. She's such a mess.
I actually, my first TikTok live was her inviting me on her TikTok.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah. She was like, yeah, she comes to my stuff all the time, and I was like, that's so cool because I've done like one, or two.
I just now got enough followers where I can do a TikTok live.
Me too. Me too. Like she was trying to bring me on months ago, and I was like, I'm not approved yet. I'm sorry. So I'd be like in the comments section, and then she did one this past week and thought she invited me, and for some reason it would only let me come on after our guest, and so instead I just filled in comments, and she and the other person held the live, but because I was like, there's no reason for me to come up after the topic's already done. But yeah, like I do get it, but it is. I don't think people pay attention to it. It's unfortunate that a lot of people don't understand our political system, how it works.
Yeah.
And I don't even know that if we had a third party, I feel like until we get rid of the electoral college, until we create like rank-based voting, I don't know that that'll work.
We do that first getting established in the houses because the
Right.
electoral college doesn't control that. Once we get established in the houses, the electoral college then kind of becomes a afterthought.
Okay.
Because then we're already established. We have a national party that's established, and the thing is, the Libertarian Party hasn't even learned this yet. The Green Party with Jill Stein hasn't learned this yet. And let's be honest, the Green Party has just been a long con that's been funded by Russia. I mean, the first thing after Jill Stein lost the election, she's in Russia partying with, the oligarchy. So, like, I mean, it's one of these things, like, to actually create a movement, you have to do the hard work. You can't just run for top office and it's all good.
Right.
And that's been what everybody's been focusing on. And it doesn't work that way. Like, nothing worthwhile doing is easy.
No.
And to make something codifiable, you have to build a system and a foundation to build off of.
Right.
And I'm saying this as somebody, like, I don't have the privilege to be able to do this. I mean, I'm doing what I can. Like I said, I'm helping stand up a new pride organization. I'm not a board member of this one. They've asked me to be, but I'm not because I don't have time. I'm with my drive. I'm working 10 plus hours a day.
Right.
I'm just, hacking on TikTok when I can. It's been very sporadic. That's some of the reason why I can never build numbers.
Right.
And I'm trying to start a private practice. I'm trying to find a way for mental health in between all of that, like doing, self-care, things of that nature. That was why I did the bike ride and just killed myself on it. Because I'm like, I just need to do this, and I need to like do this so I can just feel what it's like to like hurt and stuff again. And it's not something that's external of me.
Right. Right.
Like, I need a gut check, and I need to make it through that gut check. And
I get that.
So like it's hard, and I know I'm not the only one, and I know, like, for example, like I look at when I was growing up, my parents didn't have time to pay attention, and that's
right.
My dad worked multiple jobs, like, working as a dirt mover. Then from a dirt mover, he would come and build cabinets and stuff on the weekends and late at nights. A lot of times sleeping in the cabinet shop that was owned by my great uncle, which was a World War II veteran. It was like my grandfather. Unfortunately, we lost him when I was really young, but he still had access to that place there for a good while. And he did stuff like that, you know, picking up side gigs. Like I learned how to build because I was, you know, it was one of those things like you can't afford babysitter. So kid comes along, you give them a bunch of nails and a hammer. And then when they're big enough to
Yep.
hold something, then they start holding something. They're big enough to go get the tape measure or go get that. Then they go get that. And that was my growing up. Like, I didn't realize how poor we were until I've come to a place of adulthood and I start looking back and go, damn, we were poor.
Yeah, no, I didn't think necessarily like hearing some of the stories from my parents, my mother particularly, like listening to like some of her upbringing that I realized, wow, okay, come a long way.
Well, I'm trailer trash. I mean, I grew up in a single wide until I was like in my teenage years. And so,
My mom at one point didn't have running electricity
yeah,
or
like,
water.
yeah.
And my mother is only 67.
Well,
So,
yeah, like I've come home and turn on the light switch and the lights don't turn on. You go try to pick up the phone and, you know, the phone doesn't work. Like, yeah, it's like one of those things like it just sucks. Like, but that's just normal to you because you don't know anything different.
right.
And so it's just, and it's not getting easier. And this is the other thing the Democrats have lost, the rural community. This is the reason why, the very few Democrats that do have a rural vote are Republican light,
Right.
if not Republican all but in name. You know, like I just, we American people need to wake up, but a lot of American people are just trying to survive. I don't even know if they can wake up because they're just got too much going on.
There's a
But
lot of overwhelm.
it is, I mean, but then again, there are a lot of people like, there are a lot of small town business owners that aren't struggling that still don't pay attention to it too.
Right.
So it's a double-edged sword. Like I want people to be more informed. I kind of demand it of them, and it is a privilege not to be informed. But then again, I can understand why some aren't. But still, at the end of the day, you should at least, like, especially with podcasts and stuff now. Like, the fact is, even though with the white shift in NPR, you can get it on NPR, listen to a 15-minute podcast, and get caught up on the major topics.
Right.
Like, so there are ways to do it. That isn't just breaking news stuff. And the fact is that breaking news is what it is after post 9/11. It's just crazy to me. Like,
Right.
breaking news. I'm sorry that, Kanye threw another Nazi type thing up there, but that's not breaking news.
Right. Right. Like every storm became a like and well, actually, that did change because for a while there it was like hyperbole. They'd be like every storm was now like the next natural disaster, and then actually every storm became the next natural disaster.
Natural disasters. Oklahoma's National Weather Service is being shut down. Oklahoma is one of the leading weather schools in the nation,
Wow.
with OU's weather service.
Right.
Oklahoma just got through having a record tornado season of 100 or record, 156, I think they said, of recorded tornadoes.
Something like that. Because like even one of our shows, Jenny couldn't be here because they'd had a tornado touchdown within like a mile and a half, and like all the power was knocked out, so she couldn't be on one of our episodes last year.
Yeah. So, I mean, I lived in Moore. I had a tornado photo of like a tornado going by on my front porch kind of thing, right? Because you don't go to your shelter unless you really have to. Like,
Right.
but here's the thing. Oklahoma had the best weather network in the nation. So much good that they could predict when fires, because people don't think Oklahoma has wildfires.
Right.
And that weather system was able to help us fight and prevent wildfires better than any other state because we had this system. Well, that's going to be dismantled now. OU Weather School doesn't even know what they're going to do now because the National Weather Service is what they did. Like, those were the instructors. That's who they interned with. That's who they did everything with. And it was one of the few weather schools that had that, like, privilege of having that right there. And now it's gone.
I just don't think people realize how overly branching the things that he's put out, how they're going to impact. And Jenny, I know, I love Jenny. Jenny loves to throw out her TikToks. And she loves to get spicy with her TikToks, right? Kind of chewing at the bit of topics that the GOP have thrown out there, right? Making red meat out of things. And so she'll go in and make them kind of sarcastically calling them out. And I can't necessarily be sarcastic because it makes me angry. You don't realize the impact. Actually, they do realize the impact and they don't care.
Yeah.
And then we have a voting base that voted for that, not realizing the harms that they thought were just going to happen to other people were actually going to impact them too. They just thought because they liked the dude, it wasn't going to hurt them.
We're fixing to be greatly impacted in this harvest year because all of the fruits and vegetables that everybody love to eat are not going to have water to grow because Trump just dumped it into the ocean.
Yep.
In the guise of so-called California wildfires. Like, so,
yeah,
like that's going to impact us not for just this season, but that's going to take years. And California is already behind on the water thing,
right?
So, and the fact, so we might never catch up on that, and that's not even touching on the immigration issue and how that's going to affect farming.
Right, right. Nobody's thought about that one.
And then the farmers and stuff like. And this, let's be realistic. Farmers vote Republican, vast majority, not all, but the vast majority. And if farmers want to talk about, that are in that deal, like, well, communism, but yet a farmer will pull up to a co-op every year and dump their crops off in it.
Right.
That is what we've been wanting to do. Like, and I grew up working at co-op. Like, I grew up small town. Like, my high school class was 26 people.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, my first job was because you could work for the school before you were 16.
Mm-hmm.
And so I worked for the school over the summer 1 year. After that, I worked for the co-op all the way until I graduated. Like, I did wheat harvest, I did rye. Didn't help out with the peanut and stuff because that was the town over from where I grew up that did the peanut and cotton. But yeah, we're loading wheat trucks. Like, I remember playing football, being so sore the next day. I would go in and lay on a bag of pallets, and the farmers would just back up and they tell me how many bags of pallet or cubes they want. Toss the cubes in the back, go to the front and tell them how many bags they pulled. And I'd go lay back on the pallet sack, just waiting for the truck to pull up.
Right, right.
It just.
I worked at a farmer's market. So, and honestly, my grandparents, most of them were all farmers. So, grew up around tobacco farmers, corn farmers, wheat farmers, soybean.
Before that, I mean, these are grandparents I've cut off due to multiple reasons. But I grew up plowing fields. I grew up combining wheat. I grew up, helping out with, taking the trucks back and forth to the co-op and stuff before I could even really legally drive. But due to husbandry laws,
right?
As long as you're there in the act of farming, you can drive.
I think I was driving a tractor at 7, 8. Yeah. I mean, granted, it was only 2 miles from my house to my grandfather's house, and he had the tractor, but we would drive over and get the tractor and bring it back. And
but when you're, and when you're talking about plowing, you're only going a few miles an hour in a big circles, or
right,
so.
Right. They were okay with that.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. The USDA is the next target. And they're already in that target sites. Elon's already at. those grants are the reason why we have food every year. Now, granted, can we relook at those grants and stuff because they favor corn and things of that way more because of things back
Right.
to World War II, right? Because the corn thing does go back that far. Same way with the wool,
Right.
like there's things that we could do to monetize and how we look at grants and crops and stuff to better serve Americans. That's the reason why cornstarch isn't everything. It's because of everybody grows corn that can because there's good grants connected to it.
Yep.
And corn is a very water heavy crop. So like we can do things better. Like I'm not going to say the system's perfect. It's been far from perfect since its creation, but that was
Right.
the beauty of the creation. It wasn't perfect, but it gave a model to fix it. It was
Right.
one of the first systems that was developed that way. And like that's the only beauty part of our system. And apparently it can only last 250 years.
Oh, I hope not. I hope not.
I mean, I hope not.
I hope it lasts longer than that. Because
The sad thing is
I'm not
they
ready
keep
for that.
track of how old America is due to what the Marine Corps and Navy birthday is.
Right. Right. No, I get it. I get it. Oh, goodness.
But yeah, so my thing is, if you're a trans person, I want you're always welcome to reach out to me. I'm the OKC, I'm the
The O.
KC. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Trans Casey.
Yeah. And KC is K and C.
Right.
Because it's the best way I found to kind of fit it in. And but yeah, any trans person, I'm willing to talk to you. I'm willing to help out. I mean, something I'm trying to do right now is I don't have money. I don't have a second job built for my private practice, but in my area is very well known through those people that can connect me to them. If you're a trans person, I will see you for therapy for free. If you're getting kicked out of the military, because I know there's going to be a gap in services.
Right.
And it's
That's awesome.
I can do, and I don't have the money to do it. Like I really don't. But it's
Right.
something I can do for my community, other than all the other stuff I'm trying to do. But I'm like, if I don't do this stuff, who else is, right? I mean,
Well, I mean, and we kind of I feel like between the trans community and the allies and advocates around it, right? I feel like they feel like the circle is shrinking more and more and more of what we
it
can
is.
do, what resources we can access to help.
Well,
So I do think it is Jenny gets upset with herself sometimes and is like, I can't be here to do this or this or this. And I was like, look, as long as we do what we can, where we can, when we can.
well, it's one of those things. I don't feel like I'm doing enough until I tell somebody what I'm doing. And I'm like, oh shit, that is a lot.
Well, I mean, and sometimes we don't think that we're doing very much, right? Like, I
Yeah.
mean, honestly, and you have to balance that with self-care too for yourself.
Yeah. I have a wife, I have a kid, and I got to do that stuff. Like,
Yep.
and then, and some days I do better at that than others. But it's like I don't know. Like I'm not an Aaron Reed. I'm not, any of these prominent people that have these large social media followings. I don't have a big voice. I would love to kind of have that, but then again, I look at what that entails and the death threats and everything else. Although
Right.
I have been connected to a large trans person, as being the pre-transition of her, which I thought was funny. But yeah, no, I'm just doing what I can, and that's and this is here's what I want to tell everybody. When you're being overwhelmed and stuff, I want you to stop first. I want you to take a deep breath, hold it, let it out. Do that about 5 more times. And then I want you to go, what is in my control? Then I want you to focus as what is in your control and what you can actually do. And then once you kind of get that outlined, I want you to think is what is not in my control, but I might have some influence to help affect that. That's a secondary thing that you can go do. Do that. After that, everything else, it's off the board. You can't do it.
Right.
Like, that is not yours anymore. Like, you
And
can,
I think we fall into that. Like we all get in that trap of I want to do, I want to do, I can't do, I can't do, I can't do, and then we want to blame ourselves because we didn't actually achieve like every goal that we set. But I think that's because we lose sight of the fact that we're still taking steps
mhm.
for progress.
And I learned this when I became a DBT therapist, a didactical behavioral therapist. It's one of the few modalities I've been trained in. And it was something when I went through that training, I was like, I need to start doing some of this stuff for myself. Like, because I looked at it, I'm like, I can't, meditation is not my thing, but I can jump on a bike and ride it and be mindless in that.
Right.
That is
And
meditation.
that's still a form of meditation because I didn't
Yeah.
realize that. I had somebody last year who was like, I said something about running. I
Or
felt
move.
like I meditated in my running, and he was like, no, you can. As
Yeah.
long as you're trying to like wipe all that stuff that you're thinking about, that's still being in the moment.
And let's be realistic. And this is where mindfulness and all this stuff is, which is just fancy words for meditation.
Right.
And this is how it works: is you're trying to go and not think about something. Your brain is not going to let you win that battle. It never is. This is why it's a battle that you can never win. And this is why monks say they'll never be, transcend and all this other stuff, because you just never will. But the goal of it is to go and just have a mind that is just you're there, you're in that moment now. Nothing else matters. Your brain's going to go, hey, look at this. And all you're supposed to do is recognize it and let it go.
Right.
Return back to that neutralness. We're just here in the moment now. And the goal of that is every time your brain popcorns you with something, it's just to recognize it, let it go. Recognize it, let it go. Recognize it, let it go. And that is what meditation is. So if any type of like activity that you do, that you're in this kind of like state or flow that you can get to and just be in that state and flow, that is meditation.
Right. Right.
So
Art. Like, I mean, I got people who are like art. Like, I used to make jewelry, same thing. Like, I could cut everything off. It was the only way to stop my ADD brain, make it shut up.
yeah, I used to love drawing until after the Afghanistan deployment. And after that, I've never been able to draw. Um,
That's unfortunate. My
yeah,
kids love to draw. They love
yeah.
their art.
I had to take care of a lot. Like, I chose to go on foot patrols through landmine fields versus take
Oh,
of burnt children, because that's what we were doing. We were attached out to ODA fire base. It was my platoon, and we were attached out to ODA fire base, and and I ended up going on more patrols than any of the Marines on that base, because I was jumping on every patrol, because
mm-hmm.
I could not go stand to watch another kid on ketamine cry as we're doing wounded remit for burns. I
Right.
could go eat rotisserie chicken for the longest time returning back from that deployment.
No, I can believe that. I actually had burns myself when I was
Mm-hmm.
20, like second and third,
Mm-hmm.
and very minor, or not minor, but very small amount. That was third, but second and third degree burns, and I don't wish it on anybody. It's horrific. And I couldn't imagine like going through nursing school. I met several nurses on burnout who had left probably within 2 to 5 years of going in because they had gone to either pain clinics or they had gone to burn units, and
Burn
it was just too
burn
stressful.
faster than any ER rotation.
Yep. Yep.
Um, and there's this one kid I remember very, very distinctly. Small, very barely a toddler, like barely could walk, kind of. And the reason why I get burns is we were out in the mountains right there on the Pak-Afghan border, and how you cook and do a lot of things is open flame. And the kids be walking, they trip and they fall in the fire, and that's how they get burned. And because when you fall in the fire, you hit the coals and everything else, and it causes burns.
Yep.
One poor child, if they would have been a burn center, they would have been a critical burn care client. They had burns all over their genitals, down their legs, and up their back, and through their trunk area.
Oh gosh.
And we were treating them out of a small little building. We would go in, give them ketamine. We'd do room debridement. We'd plaster Celvidine on them.
Oh, I'm not sure what happened. Casey may have lost her battery, guys. I know. We'll give her a second because it's still saying that she's there on my end. I just know I can't see her or hear her at the moment. We'll wait a couple of seconds. If she doesn't come back, I'll close this out. I know we're over, so if you're still here, I greatly, greatly appreciate you coming and staying. Ah, there she is. Hang on.
Sorry, I gotta finish up and I gotta help my significant other.
That's right.
So we'd wrap them up with gauze and we'd send them back, and they would come back to us like once, twice a week, and we'd do that. Like, and just I couldn't do it anymore. Like, I was just like, I'll get shot at, blown up, and whatever. Like, and I
Just
say walk through
don't make me
landmine
do
fields.
that
We
again.
literally walked through some landmine fields coming off the mountains. So
That's a little more daring than I would do
you
there,
wouldn't
but
find out until you walk to the other side and see red rocks. But
really dangerous.
are
Well,
you
I want
there?
to thank you. Yes, I wanted to thank you. I don't know. Can you hear me? You might not can hear me. Oh,
I'll be with you in just a second, hon.
okay. I'm not sure. I don't think. Not sure. Can you hear me? I don't think she can.
Well,
I'm thinking, yeah. I'm thinking that she can't hear me, which is okay. That's all right. But with that being said, I think I'm just going to go ahead and close this out since we are fading and she can't seem to hear me. But I want to thank y'all if you stuck around this long. Brent, LinkedIn user, I know that you asked for information and I can't see who it is. I will look. And you said thanks for your humanness, Casey Fox, and I want to thank you for saying that. I will go out and add something when I see you on LinkedIn. But thank you guys for coming this evening. I appreciate. Oh, she's gonna try once more. Let's see. Can you hear me now? You can't hear me. I'm gonna say the sound is messed up.
yeah, I think we can call it good.
Okay, that's good. That's good. All right,
And I'll
guys.
let you go. Thank you for the time.
Yes.
Reach out to me anytime, and I'll do what I can.
Awesome. Thank you. And everybody, if you want to get a hold of Casey
So
and you
we'll see
don't know
ya.
what you can always hit me up and I will send you her information. With that being said, thank you for joining us tonight on Transparents, and we will see you next week. Good night.